Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, this entire election campaign cycle for 2016 has just gone from being arguably one of the most heated, contentious, and personalized ones in living memory to beyond a shadow of the doubt of that caliber of a campaign. It has been in the mud. It's been dirty. It's been filled with gotcha questions and attempts of demonizing and vilifying the opponents of the prospective gutless opposition party, or GOP frontrunner, New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around Vulgarian, Donald J. Trump, a.k.a. John Barron, a.k.a. John Miller. And the reason I can say this with as much conviction as I do is because of what John Barron, as he liked to be called in times of dire crisis when he was first getting started, has been willing to say about Texas Senator Ted Cruz. We know that he's already attempted to label Cruz as the lying Ted, or the candidate who's willing to lie just about anything. Of course, my first officer, Jeremy Graventon, and I have always credited this as to projection, that the Donald was projecting his own political shortcomings and insecurities on that of Ted Cruz. Of course, how can anyone believe what Donald Trump says when he has a nasty habit of being consistently inconsistent? And then, if you even dare ask a legitimate question with respect to the positions that Donald has held, all of a sudden you are then attacked personally. This is just par for the course when it comes to the ducking Don, who has skipped two gutless opposition party presidential candidate debates in order to avoid having to go one-on-one with Ted Cruz. We see also that he is afraid of the Fox News channel's Megyn Kelly. Of course, it may not have been a fair question that she asked at the initial debate that started this entire campaign cycle off, but nevertheless, he is going to face challenging audiences and unfriendly audiences if he somehow, by some cruel twist of fate, manages to secure the nomination for the GOP. These are just the facts. It's just reality. And the fact that he is showing this timidity is alarming. I thought part of what drew his vast crowd of supporters to him was his no-nonsense approach, his willingness to lay things on the table and say what's on his mind. Of course, that has seemingly gotten him into more trouble as of late than he would care to admit. Think about the recent attacks he's made on Ted Cruz's wife, Heidi. It was a despicable display of the nastiness that this campaign has been brought to by his vulgarity. You see, that's the thing. We here at the Wright Flyer make no bones about the fact that we have declared war on the cancerous doctrine of political correctness. That said, we do not believe that that means that we should throw out a code of civility or decency. That would be beyond the pale, because political correctness in and of itself, at its very nature, is attempting to attack this pillar of human decency. That is one of the reasons, indeed the primary reason, why we here at the Wright Flyer have declared war on the doctrine. But now we see that there's been a bit of a shakeup in the Trump camp. Corey Lewandowski, the man who has a track record of getting physical with people and who attacked former Breitbart reporter Michelle Fields, Whether or not you agree with that case, it is still something that is going to haunt him, particularly now that he has that simple battery misdemeanor charge against him. These are things that cannot be swept under the rug. And it's finally come home to roost at Team Trump, and therefore Trump has shaken up his campaign just a little bit. And part of this shakeup has been to select a new right-hand man. And Trump's new right-hand man, Paul Manafort, has already hit, for the first time with his expanded role, the Sunday news talk show circuits. What was his design to do this? Well, it's to get his name known, because he heretofore had been unheard of. He's just another thuggish face in the Trump camp. But he came out swinging, and he came out laying a huge whopper of an accusation at the Cruz campaign. Now, folks, we have often said that whenever you see people throw out the Nazi comparison, it's usually a bunch of political fluff, because it has become one of those politically correct buzzwords oftentimes utilized by the salivating mainstream media and the acolytes of the Fabian socialist left to just make people shut down their mental faculties, to make them emote rather than think. And oftentimes that is the goal of those at the extreme fringes of the left when they throw out this type of language. We saw it utilized time and again all throughout the presidency of George W. Bush. Remember, they likened him to a Nazi time and again. And they used all of the vile, disgusting Solinsky tactics straight out of Rules for Radicals that we are seeing the Trump campaign now utilize against his Republican rivals, while he has barely even lifted a finger against our true opponent in the general election, his best friend, Hillary Rotten Clinton. Now, I know it may seem contentious of me to say that, and that it may not seem to jive well with a lot of the Trump supporters, but the fact of the matter remains that he has utilized these tried and true, die-in-the-wool, radical, extremist, left-wing tactics and strategies, and all in the hopes of destroying, through character assassination, anyone who dares stand in his way. Just recently, we saw that they attacked Mary Catherine Ham, they being some of Trump's loudest acolytes, marching on another Twitter crusade for questioning some of his tactics, where she basically was praising his daughter in a way that said, basically, that she wished that Donald could be more like Ivanka. That led to people basically making fun of the fact that her husband died last year. That is cruel. Cruel beyond any shadow of the doubt. And it is not something that should be tolerated in the arena of American politics. This is driving a wedge in between the base of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, making things far more contentious than they ought or even need to be. But that has become the modus operandi of the New York Vulgarian. And we can see that this played out again in Donald Trump's right-hand man, his new right-hand man, Paul Manafort, going to the salivating mainstream media's Sunday retinue to label the tactics used by the Cruz camp in getting delegates, the undeclared delegates, to side with Cruz. This is just a classic form of American politics. The system and the rules have been there for a very long time, and the fact that Trump doesn't seem to understand them once again shows a glaring lack of grasping the knowledge of the procedural aspects of our electoral system in this great representative republic of ours. It's not something that should be thrown up into the air for doubt like this, nor is it something that should be called Gestapo tactics. After all, the Gestapo was opposed to any form of a Republican system of government or any type of democratic voting. That was part of the crux of the Nazi system. The Gestapo didn't exist until after Der Fuhrer had taken full control of the German government and the Weimar Republic had been swept aside. So again, this is a perversion of history. This is an attempt to label aspersions where none exist, and it is underhanded politics defined. We have said that politics is an ugly, dirty, and nasty game, but the way that Donald and his camp plays politics is beyond contempt. It shows that he has a loathing of the American electorate, that he does not believe in the way of our founding fathers, and it would also explain why, when it comes to the true key, that one document that will serve as the answer to all of the overwhelming problems that face this nation, our Constitution, why he's never referenced it, except in rare instances where it's pressed to him. You see, this coinciding with the way that he said that he would appoint Supreme Court justices who would investigate Hillary Clinton's email scandal, which, by the way, we'll get into something that the president said about this during the Sunday talk show rounds as well, as the show goes a little bit further on. It just goes to show that there is a disconnect from reality, something that we say is more akin to the left than with the conservative movement in this great representative republic of ours. So here we are facing these problems, and again, the disingenuousness of the Trump camp is put on full display in front of the cameras of the salivating mainstream media to the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, once again in a vile attempt to demonize and vilify Ted Cruz. Again, folks, this is where the Cruz derangement syndrome seems to have its start. It is from the Trump camp, spinning and spewing all of this vitriol, all of this hate with no modicum of truth behind it. And I even have a short clip here, a short soundbite of the new right-hand man of Trump coming out and saying these dastardly things, and I'm going to cue that up right now.
What is?
I'll tell you, but
what
it is Ted Cruz's style, and that's going to wear thin very fast.
You think he's threatening delegates?
Well, he's threatening that there. You go to these county conventions and you see the Gestapo tactics, the scorched earth tactics.
Gestapo tactics.
Yeah, they are.
That's a strong word.
Well, you look at. We're going to be filing several protests because the reality is, they are not playing by the rules. But frankly, that's the side game, because the only game I'm focusing on right now is getting delegates, and the games that have happened even this past weekend, and are not important to the long-term game of how do we get to 1237.
But is he? I guess what is fair game in getting a delegate? Is paying for their convention costs? Is it golf club memberships? What's fair and unfair in this? What's ethical? What's unethical?
Well, there's the law, and then there's ethics, and then there's getting the votes. I'm not going to get into what tactics to use. I happen to think the best way we're going to get delegates is to have Donald Trump be exposed to.
Oh, he's not going to get into it. You know why he's not going to get into it? It's because he doesn't know. It's because this is all a bunch of chicanery. This is what we are used to seeing and hearing from the Trump camp. Like I said, from day one, this is all a bunch of conjecture. It's all designed to be a game of semantics, which is straight out of the playbook of the left. Don't we deserve better than this? I think we deserve better than this, and I think the American people demand better than this. If Trump is going to continue to double down on these irresponsible tactics, these dangerous and deceitful tactics, it is going to come back and harm him even more so than it has already done so. But this is just beyond belief. This is showing the entire mob-like mentality that exists within the Trump camp. And there's already been some idle speculation that Paul Manafort has some connections with the New York mob. Now, without anything to back that up, I'm not going to give it any credence, but he is utilizing tactics that seem to fit right in with that type of deleterious system. Now, folks, this sort of tactic, this sort of strategy even, has no place in an open and honest system like that of the United States. It once again shows that Trump is all about setting a torch to our most sacred foundational documents and laughing to the bank. He's going to go out and say, look, all of these problems which I have created, only I can fix. That is straight out of the Fabian Socialist playbook. It shows that he is committed to this idea of tearing America asunder and leaving the pieces behind so that we can construct some new system. What new system might that be? Well, we know from his past statements, going back to the interviews that he gave to the late Paul Russert at Meet the Press in the 1990s, that he wanted higher taxes for the wealthy, that he wanted to have universal health care, and that the whole notion of guns irritated him. But it shows that he has, for the vast majority of his adult life, held positions which are more akin to the Fabian socialist left than to the right. He has professed progressive beliefs, and that should have all American voters, push back in their seats, wondering what has happened. How did this person become the supposed frontrunner of the gutless opposition party? Again, this goes back to something that Jeremy and I have mentioned oft times on past episodes of the Wright Flyer, in so much as what we're seeing here is the reaction of blind rage and fury within the electorate. Now, folks, we can understand the anger, the outrage, the feeling of betrayal. Think back to the 2014 midterm elections and all of the grandiose and verbose promises that were made by the gutless opposition party as they had that stunning landslide victory. It was that the American people wanted the Republican Party to do anything and everything to stop the Obama regime from getting its way at tearing this country apart, from getting its way at continuing to divide us, at continuing to delve into that dangerous game of identity politics, when in fact there is only one identity that truly matters, and that is citizen of the United States. You see, this balkanization of American politics has led to the heaps of division that we have seen plague this nation for at least the past 7 years. Race relations are at a 40-year low. And then we see phony things like the so-called Republican war on women. Unfortunately, Donald Trump, in his bombastic style, seems to legitimize all of these ridiculous claims and labels that are espoused by the left. And that is troubling. The reason it's troubling is that should he, by some cruel twist of fate, secure the nomination for the gutless opposition party, he will thereby fulfill all of these things, handing Hillary Clinton all of these arguments on a silver platter. I don't think the Democrats could have conjured up a better candidate to vie for the nomination of the gutless opposition party, because it fulfills all of these two-dimensional caricatures that they have attempted to typecast the American right with for decades. Think about it. Donald Trump has said disparaging things about women. Look at the way that he treated the Michelle Fields incident. Look at the way that he treated Ted Cruz's wife, Heidi. That is not acceptable. It is not acceptable, and that is not just some politically correct notion. That is a notion of human decency and dignity. We in the United States are a decent people, particularly those of us on the right. When we have had to fight these false labels time and again for as far back as I can remember, this is nothing more than a setback, and a dangerous setback at that. We deserve better than this. We demand better than this. But I don't think we're going to get better than this from Donald Trump. He's shown no seriousness about it. He continues to campaign in this brash fashion, and as you could see from his right-hand man, Paul Manafort, we were just getting more of the same, more of the modus operandi of his bizarre ascendant campaign. But this campaign does not reflect the values of true conservatives. He does not embrace pure constitutionalism, and that makes him a rogue outsider. But more so, it speaks volumes about the condition of American polity. Remember that when Barack Hussein Obama was first vying for the highest office in the land, he claimed with great bravado that we were 5 minutes away from fundamentally transforming the United States. Perhaps the candidacy of Donald J. Trump is part of that supreme fundamental transformation of which Obama spoke of before assuming the reins of political power in this representative republic of ours. These are the facts that we cannot ignore. And they're staring us there like some haunting reflection in a carnival mirror. And we have been enamored, terrified, even horrified by the reflection that stands back and stares us in the face, all the while failing to realize that it is a warped, twisted, and inaccurate reflection. Unfortunately, we have allowed ourselves to be swept up in such raw emotionalism that we are being manipulated, not just by Donald Trump, but by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media as well. If we do not wake up to the realities of what is necessary to get this country back on course, then I'm afraid we're just going to continue to see more of the same. And that would be disastrous for us all, because it gives the left all the credence and credibility they need to continue this laughable narrative of all of these so-called Republicans' wars on. The Republican war on women, the Republican war on the poor, the Republican this, the Republican that. All the while, it allows Hillary Clinton to slink along, despite the fact that she had engaged in criminality with the storage of governmental emails on her private email server. And that brings me back to another thing that Donald Trump has oftentimes brought up throughout the course of this 2016 presidential election cycle. He claims that he is a great uniter and that he is bringing in fresh blood to the Republican Party. Yet, truth be told, these so-called new voters, this fresh blood of which he speaks, is none other than Democrats who have temporarily crossed the line, party boundaries, in order to vote for the candidate they think is least equipped and least capable of defeating the Fabian socialist nominee that will be put forward by the Democrat Party in the general election this November. They've gone to social media to profess that that is exactly the tactic and strategy that they had in mind, and that does not speak or bode well for the Republican Party. The other aspect that we can take away from all of this is that irrespective of whomsoever winds up being the gutless opposition party or GOP's nominee in November, will now have an uphill battle against Hillary or Bernie Sanders because of the way in which Donald Trump has campaigned all throughout the campaign season and the primary season. The reason I say this is because he's already in this foolish manner and fashion, delivered this gift unto the Democrats, unabashedly so, without second thought, without any thought of it being a hindrance to the party. It shows that he has approached this in the most selfish fashion. It has led many to question whether he's actually a Democrat plant. I don't think there's enough evidence to fully confirm that, but if we ask ourselves, how would a Democrat plant act? I think we could say that they would act just like Donald J. Trump, as he has throughout this campaign primary season thus far, right down to the disingenuous birther attack that he's hoisted against Cruz. But as we've said, the statute, Section 1401 of the U.S. Code, has unequivocally stated that he is qualified. And we have pointed that out time and again. Yet there are those who follow the Trump camp who continue to say that this isn't the case. Yet every court that this has been brought before has tossed it out on that ground. So again, the facts and the law speak for themselves. And if the Trump camp does not want to accept that as reality, that is their choice. That is their willingness to ignore the law, to operate outside the scope and purview of our legal system. But it brings up that old adage that we have oftentimes repeated on past episodes of the Wright Flyer, that the United States is a nation of laws, not of men, meaning that equal protection of the law still applies. And that is irrespective of one's social rank, irrespective of one's socioeconomic class, irrespective of what one might believe about the law. We have to remember that this system is one that is constitutionally endowed, and it is the Constitution that is the key to restoring the nation. And if you look at the preamble to the United States Constitution, you see that we, the people, are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. We are the popular sovereigns. Therefore, by the very design of our representative republic, we are the only ones that can save this country. Thus far, there is but one candidate who has made that a cornerstone of his entire candidacy. That is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He is the one that says we, never I, never me, me, me. It is we. That's right, folks. The way that our system is designed, it is we, the people, that must unite, that must come together to stand up for what we all hold near and dear about this great representative republic. What we need in a leader is a soul who will remove the chains and shackles of governmental bondage and tyranny, thereby allowing the popular sovereigns to do what is necessary to begin to set this country back on track. That is why we, so early on, endorsed Ted Cruz. You may disagree with us on that, but we ask only that you don't just take what we're saying here at face value, but that you look into it for yourself to see whether it fits with what you understand to be the truth. And that means looking into not only our shared Constitution, but also the statements that are being made by the various politicians who are vying for the highest office in the land. And make no mistake about it, folks, Donald J. Trump is a politician. He's been a politician for as long as he's been in the public spotlight. Remember that in order to be able to be a high-powered and successful business person, you must be a politician. And therefore, to claim that you support Donald Trump because he is not a politician is being intellectually disingenuous, not only with everyone else, but with yourself. Because Trump is a politician. Look at the way he's played this entire game. It is straight out of a politician's handbook. This is the truth, and it's something that that none of us can deny. That is why we are out here to provide you with the truth, because It shall set us all free, and it has no agenda. So, what is it that Mr. Manafort was so angry about? What was it that was leading him to act like the tactics utilized by the Cruz camp were tantamount to Gestapo tactics? Well, it's because Cruz has worked with this ground game, which even the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media have had to recognize as being an all-powerful element of his campaign, being a part of the entire thing. And that is this: he has been able to work out a powerful and strong ground game that has led to a lot of amazing developments. And it speaks volumes to the great understanding that Cruz has with respect to the political game. And make no mistake about it, folks, politics is a game, and it has always been that way. And what it comes down to show is that Manafort wants to take it a step further, to say those who understand how things work and play within the rules are actually operating outside of the rules. Again, this shows that the Trump camp is operating outside of the rules and is projecting onto their opponents. Of course, this has given a lot of subterfuge for Madam Clinton and her festering email scandal, which shows no signs of going away anytime in the foreseeable future. And that brings us to Donald J. Trump going to the Sunday news program circuit to peddle a bunch of nonsensical bovine excrement. And what I speak to in particular here is he said on Fox News Sunday that it was just a display of carelessness on the part of Hillary Clinton, but at no time had the national security interests of the United States ever been put in direct jeopardy. Now, folks, Obama is not one that we can take as being credible with making these sorts of statements and innuendos. First of all, this is the man who told us time and again that ISIS was the junior varsity team. Yet ISIS has made inroads and has grown far more powerful than we could have ever imagined, and it's all due, thanks in no small part, to the president's tactic of leading from his behind. You see, this is what is making the United States of America a laughingstock to the world. There has been a power vacuum created in this president's woeful lack of leadership. He has done everything in his power to weaken the prestige and the influence of the United States of America, not only at home, but also abroad. And that has led to some serious consequences. Folks, this all goes back to the Arab Spring. I'm sure you all recall back in 2011 when we saw all of these Islamo-fascists start to rise in power as the destabilizing effects of the Muslim Brotherhood basically took hold in that entire region. Now, all of a sudden, American interests across the globe are standing at significant risk. We've seen the terrorists gain a second wind, and this is all working once again against the favor and concerted interests of the United States. And the fact that the then Secretary of State, now presumptive Democrat frontrunner Hillary Rotten Clinton, was in charge of that and had a private email server that did not have to meet the strict standards of governmental servers, just goes to show that her quote-unquote simple lack of judgment and this modicum of carelessness on her part has actually made America less safe. Now, Obama attempted to go on and justify this by claiming that there is a tier system with respect to classified information, and that none of the more serious classified documents were ever contained on the private server. That doesn't matter, folks. That's just once again attempting to play into this Fabian socialist game of semantics. We've warned you about these dangerous games of semantics going back to our first episode, which aired on September 11th of 2015. They will use these games to try and lessen the detrimental impact that their foolish policies have on our nation at large. But it is something that cannot be ignored. And though try as they might to sweep it under the rug, it will come back to haunt her in the general election. If, and that is a big if, the gutless opposition party actually puts up a credible candidate to face her. Otherwise, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media will be able to spin this in the way that they are hoping. They will be able to use those fake identity politics issues that I mentioned in the first segment, and they will be able to use that to bludgeon the Republican candidate time and again. And if that candidate, by some cruel twist of fate, winds up being the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around Vulgarian Donald J. Trump, I believe he is ill-equipped to handle such a concerted effort. And if he also goes to his usual method of retaliation via the various platforms of social media, of which he seems to be so proficient, it will not play well, because the media will use that to their great advantage. That has been their modus operandi all along. We have said this for time and memorial because it is the type of game that the media plays. They are approaching this with a bias. The whole notion of objectivity has been cast by the wayside. Again, that is not really that shocking because they've done it for generations now. But that said, they themselves had said this is the election cycle in which we are going to cast aside conventional wisdom. Donald Trump, for everything that he stands for and represents, and the vulgar style in which he conducts himself, has defied conventional wisdom time and again. This is not something that is fake. It is something that is truthfully a part of it. And he has run his campaign like this ever since he first officially threw his hat in the ring last summer. But Obama seems convinced that Hillary has done no wrong, because if she had done wrong, it would reflect poorly upon his own regime and whatever legacy he is trying to construct for himself. The problem is, folks, he's already done enough damage to his legacy by himself. The way that he runs the country via executive fiat, ignoring the will of the people through their respective representatives, because the legislative branch of government, by its very design, is the people's branch of the government. That is where our will is to be put forth. That is why it is the only one that the Constitution has enumerated with legislative powers, with the power to create laws. That makes sense. And it goes into the way that the United States Constitution created 3 separate branches of government, each having its own unique and truly individual goal, intent, purpose, and design. But all of that doesn't matter to Barack Hussein Obama. He sees it as interfering with his ability to run the country as he sees fit. That is why he has acted in an imperialistic manner and mindset, and he has done so from the beginning. Yet, as he has received some resistance from the legislature, although not to the degree that the American people would prefer. He has decided that he will use his pen and his telephone to work around the constitutional foundation of this great representative republic of ours. That, again, speaks volumes as to why we need someone who would return all levels of government in this country back to strict adherence to the fundamental principles contained within the four corners of our shared Constitution. That is why Jeremy and I have oftentimes repeated on past episodes of the Wright Flyer that the Constitution is the key. The Constitution defines and mandates the proper scope and application of government. That is what it was designed to do. That is what it is intended to do. And the further that we divorce ourselves from the strictures and scriptures contained within the Constitution, that is when we see the government continually march towards this despotic thing that we have seen now. It is why many of us can rightly say that we don't recognize this country, that this country is acting in a way that is against what we are trying to do. And it is dangerous. Dangerous because it goes against our thing, our notion as a representative republic, and it speaks volumes about those who would act in such a way as to deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable rights. Our nation is one which must operate within the scope of the Constitution, because the Constitution is that guiding light by which we can achieve the type of greatness that is necessary to restore prosperity to the people. But unlike what Donald Trump has said with his shallow, empty, hollow, and meaningless platitude of "Make America Great Again," we do not believe that America ever ceased to begin being great in the first place. The reason for that is that our Constitution is still in place. Our Constitution is still the hallmark by which we have achieved great things. And as long as it is in place, this nation will never stop being great. We are a great people, and it is up to us to ensure that we return to the proper scope and application of government pursuant to the goals and aims of our Constitution. But I don't think we will see that if we continue to go down the lines of what we have seen with Donald Trump. When you have someone like Paul Manafort going to the Sunday news talk shows in front of the cameras of the salivating mainstream media and attempt to display the sort of hubris that he did, it just acts in a way that is truly detrimental to our nation as a whole, because it once again adds to the divisiveness that we have seen in this electoral cycle, which should not have any place in an open and honest society like that of the United States. Again, it speaks volumes as to what they are trying to achieve, what they are trying to build, and it goes against everything that we hold near and dear in this great representative republic of ours. We must, again, speak to common sense. And that means that we hold accountable those who have had the reins of political power and have abused them. Hillary Clinton should be held accountable for her email scandal. But truth be told, we can rest assured that under this Department of Justice, it will not be addressed. And if she becomes president, we know it will not be addressed. Therefore, it would go to common sense to say that we should not put up a candidate who is most likely to fall to defeat against Hillary in the general election. And thus far, in at least 12 head-to-head races in the polls, Donald Trump has gone to consistent defeat time and again against Hillary Clinton. Why? Because he fulfills all of the two-dimensional caricatures that the left has attempted to draw with respect to the right in this country. That is what Hillary wants, because it fulfills her goals. It gives her an easy straw man argument to pull up during all of the debates, which, by the way, Donald will not be able to skip if by some cruel twist of fate he does wind up being the gutless opposition party or GOP's nomination in the general election. You see, he's already set a dangerous precedent, a precedent of ignoring the will of the people, showing a disdain for the American people, and that can only play directly into the hands of Hillary. Now, folks, Hillary is a dangerous candidate. She represents all that is wrong with American politics. She would continue the status quo that has led us to such mediocrity and failure as we have seen throughout this disastrous 2 terms of the Barack Hussein Obama regime. Therefore, we must remain resolutely steadfast in our opposition to her. But that means actually putting up a credible candidate, a candidate who stands a chance of actually defeating her. Thus far, that candidate has proven to be Ted Cruz. But we see the spreading of the manure of Cruz derangement syndrome by the part of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around Vulgarian, Donald Juan Trampolini. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting because he has attacked his own party, his opponents in his own party, with much greater zeal than he has the true opposition. And these are things that cannot be ignored. These are things that are hampering us, playing right into the hands of those Fabian socialists who are looking to maintain their vice-like grip on the reins of political power in this country. It's dangerous. The reason I say it's dangerous is because he's threatening to propel them to the top. He's threatening to push them to credibility. And the longer that this is allowed to continue, the longer we're going to see our country continue to suffer. We, the people of the United States, are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. That is a message that Jeremy and I have repeated oft-times on past episodes of the Wright Flyer. That is the way that this nation was designed at its inception over 230 years ago. Nevertheless, that is something that the elitists, those who currently wield the reins of political power in this nation, have divorced themselves from. They look at us with sheer and utter contempt. Why? Because they dislike who we are. They dislike the fact that we wield the reins of true political power in this country. All of the authority that the government claims to wield is delegated authority. And it's delegated from the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this nation, we the people. This is part of the natural law tenets that underpin and form the foundation of this great representative republic of ours. It's something that we have to take to heart, something that is the central tenet of who we are, both as a nation and as a people. We cannot ignore it. We cannot forget about it, because that is the greatest bargaining chip that we, the true wielders of sovereignty in this nation, have. But you see, this is the danger of the historical revisionists and the Fabian socialists who have infiltrated our institutions of education in this great representative republic, because they are attempting to indoctrinate the up-and-coming generations, poisoning their minds, not teaching them really who they are, and thereby spreading the lies that they have with respect to who we are. That means it's easier for them to make the nation malleable, to transform it. Again, recall that Obama stated back in 2008 that we were 5 minutes away from fundamentally transforming the United States. At the time, we couldn't have known the full extent of what he meant, but we do now, because we have seen it play out time and again. It has repeated itself over and over again. And make no mistake about it, if anyone other than Ted Cruz is to become the next president of the United States, that agenda will continue. It will continue uninterrupted. It will continue and be unimpeded. That works against us because that helps to cement their tactics, their strategy, and ultimately that goal and that modus operandi is diametrically opposed to the will of the people. You see, part of the anger that we see gripping the electorate of the United States right now is born directly of this attempt to work against the interests of the American people. It is deeply rooted in this notion that the American people are to be cast aside, that they are to be ignored as the great wielders of sovereignty in this republic of ours. But that is totally against everything that this nation stands for and represents. Again, folks, this is why it is so important for us all to have a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable rights, which were endowed to us by our Creator. Once we understand that, we can take the principled stance that is necessary to say the most powerful, universally recognized word in all of the English vocabulary, that of no. No, you cannot take away our rights. No, you cannot impede our ability to think for ourselves. No, you cannot have your way with us. You see, that is such a powerful thing. And then this fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our Constitution and of our rights gives us the ability to see which candidates really are standing up for us. Again, with this in mind, I want you to ask yourselves, with respect to Donald Trump and even with Hillary Clinton, where at any time they have offered something that actually stands in line with the Constitution, where their promises do not violate the scriptures of the Constitution. I think you'll be hard-pressed to find an answer to that because it's quite easy. There has not been one single time in which they have said that. There has not been a single time where they have professed a position that is in the best interest of the American people. Rather, they are taking a hard-line stance against who we are, both as a nation and as a people. Why? Because they are selfish. They are greedy. And you see, that's one of the funny things about those, particularly within the ranks of the Fabian socialists. They try and say that the private sector is wicked and evil because of greed. They try to separate the type of motivational things that you see within the public sector, the ambitions of the public sector, as somehow being a cut above private wants for embetterment. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. It is still a form of greed. And in fact, it is a worse type of greed because it will have a disparate impact on the fundamental and inalienable rights of the popular sovereigns. They don't want you to think about it in that light. This is why you never hear the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media ever ask such a question. They know that it would go against the type of propagandistic message that they have been peddling for generations now. And what's interesting about it all is that they feel so comfortable now that you even see Vermont Senator Nerdface Boing Sanders come out and say that he is a self-avowed democratic socialist. In years past, that would have been the death knell of his campaign. It would have meant instant disqualification. Yet he is so comfortable, and indeed all of the Fabian socialists are so comfortable that they are willing to put that forward as a viable choice. It speaks volumes as to the extent to which the United States of America has plunged as a nation. It shows that we are in the midst of a great identity crisis that has been created by none other frothing at the mouth left-wing politicians. Again, we have to stand up to this. And there is no one else other than we, the people, who are equipped and who are able to stand up to this madness. If we fail to do so, then we can only hold ourselves as to blame for this strange development in this great republic of ours. However, I am supremely confident that the American people will not allow this to happen within their country, that they understand just at what is at stake and are willing to do what is necessary to ensure that the country no longer falls into the diabolical hands and scheming of the Fabian socialists who have taken over the Democrat Party. This is not the Democrat Party of our grandparents' generation. Yes, there were Fabian socialists in it at that time, but not to the same degree that it is now. But we see that the Fabian socialists have set their eyes and their sights on the gutless opposition party, or GOP. That's right, folks. This entire candidacy of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around Vulgarian, Donald J. Trump, a.k.a. John Barron, a.k.a. John Miller, falls within the purview of Fabian socialism. Why? Because he's even come out and said that he loves the individual mandate aspect of Obamacare. Now, is that really what someone who follows the Constitution would say? No, because it is diametrically opposed to the fundamental tenets and building blocks of our Constitution. It goes against the stance that our founding fathers held when they drafted that document and ratified that document 2 centuries ago. These are the things that we have to keep in mind and take to heart. This is the important message that must be delivered to the American people. And again, this is why we here at the Wright Flyer go and make these programs. I speak into this microphone to provide you with the truth, but I don't expect you to take with, that which I say at face value. I want you to look into it for yourselves, to empower yourselves with the undeniable knowledge that will set you free. Then you will be more empowered to stand up to those who would do anything within their power to work against you, to try and strip you of your fundamental and inalienable rights. That is the way these people work, and they will be stunned when they see that you are capable of standing up to them and saying enough is enough. You see, anger is fine, but you have to back it up with logic and reason. When you do that, you become an unstoppable force. That is what they fear. And you see, that is why Donald Trump is in this. He is in this to be a distractor. He is there to draw your attention away from the real opponents, which is why he attacks his fellow Republicans with far greater zeal than he ever attacked the Democrat opponents. Think back to one of the debates where he blamed 9/11 entirely on George W. Bush. That is a tactic straight out of the Democrat playbook. We heard that reiterated time and again by Dingy Harry Reid, by Nasty Pelosi, and all of the other acolytes of the Fabian socialist left in this country, and it should not be tolerated in our representative republic. Yet here we are. That is the disingenuous and dangerous game they play, and we are subjected to their twisted, evil machinations time and again. Well, it is time once again for us to say, enough is enough. We will not bow down to those games. We will not accept those games as truth. We know the truth, and the truth can be found within the Constitution. This is the way that you get around the problems that face the country. It is why we say that the solutions that we offer are real world. They're practicable, they're workable, and they can be adopted immediately. But in order to do so, you have to have a candidate who understands them and is willing to walk that line and is willing to tell us the things that need to be heard, irrespective of whether those things are things we want to hear or not. We are to the point now that we will have to hear certain things that aren't going to rub us the right way, but we must hear them and we must address them. Because if we continue to kick this can down the road, then we will see our country come to an inevitable collapse. That collapse will become unavoidable. That is the sorry state of reality which we face. And yes, the detente wing of the gutless opposition party is at part to blame for all of this. Nevertheless, it is there, and it is going to be something that we have to address. But I think that we can and we will address them because, let's be honest, folks, we must address them. So what we see this all comes down to, once again, is this dangerous game of semantics that we've been warning you about since the start of our program, going all the way back to September 11th of 2015. That is why we see Donald Trump more willingly attack his fellow Republicans than attack the true opponents that we'll be facing in the general election. And it comes down to this idea that he has that he is the candidate that is against this cancerous doctrine of political correctness, yet when it suits him, he will stoop to such a level. Recall during one of the nationally televised gutless opposition party, or GOP, presidential candidate debates, he attacked Ted Cruz's using his own words against him about New York values in that 1999 Meet the Press interview with the late Tim Russert, where he said that some of his difference in opinions and views on the nation and national politics would be given to his New York values. He tried to wrap 9/11 into it. Of course, what's so intellectually disingenuous about that stance is those values are shared American values. We would all be upset with any American town or city being attacked by the Islamo-fascists, just as we were in San Bernardino, California, which was the worst attack on American soil by these Islamo-fascists since 9/11 itself. So you see, folks, today, he visited the 9/11 Memorial Museum in New York for the first time since it was built and lauded New York values again. That is an intellectually disingenuous statement. Of course, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media will once again try and spin this in such a way as to make Trump look good. Why? Because they see this as an opportunity to promote the weakest candidate against their darling Hillary Rotten Clinton, or even nerd-face Bernie Sanders. You see, this is the sort of diabolical plotting that we have to deal with respect to the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. Look at all the free airtime they've given Trump. This shows that he has been their pick from the start. And you know, whenever the media wants to pick a candidate, it is the candidate that is least likely, at least for the conservative side, to win. They want to see a continuation of the Fabian socialist tactics and agenda that we have seen throughout these two disastrous terms of the Barack Hussein Obama regime. There is no other way to split this. There is no other way to present this. That is who they are, that is what they are hoping to achieve, and that is what they are working towards. That cannot be ignored. And so we see that we know that Trump fits their agenda perfectly. And his attacks on Ted Cruz fall more down the lines of those Sololinsky tactics than anything that he's used against the left thus far. By his own admission, he has not even yet begun to attack the left. But there has to be more to it than this. There has to be a deeper reaching reality and truth that we must all come towards here. Because if we don't come towards it, we're just going to continue to see more of the same. And more of the same is not good for the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this great representative republic of ours. These are the facts as they are, and there is no way around it. But Trump used, once again, the tragedy of 9/11 for political points and for political gain. That is despicable. It speaks volumes about his character or lack thereof. We have said it time and again here on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that Donald J. Trump is not above using tragedy for his own political gain. We saw how he lied in Chicago, saying that the Chicago Police Department told him to close down his campaign rallies and events there. But then, almost immediately thereafter, the Chicago police came out and said no, they had not told him to cancel. So you see, he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. He's trying to pull the political wool over our eyes so that we do not see the truth. That, my friends, is nothing short of a Fabian socialist tactic, trying to make oneself appear better than one is and kicking dirt upon one's own opponents. It's despicable. I can think of no better way to describe it other than that one singular word of despicable, because it is a childish campaign that he is engaged in. It is a reckless campaign that he is engaged in, inciting violence time and again. And if you stop and ask yourself, of all the candidates throughout this entire election cycle thus far, how come Donald Trump's is the only one that has had a modicum of violence unfurled before it? Why is that now becoming something that we see repeated time and again in front of the cameras of the salivating mainstream media? Again, it comes down to the agenda that Trump is working towards. It is all about pageant and theatrics, not about reality, not about what's good for the nation, but this sort of strongman mentality that just engulfs his entire campaign. We deserve and demand better than this, both as a nation and as a people, because the way he works and the way he goes about it does not line up with our outlook, with our prospect as a nation and as a people. Of course, we here at the Wright Flyer were among the first to tell you this. We were the first to warn you about the dangers of what Trump is and what he stands for and represents. Of course, that is not an easy position for us to have taken, particularly speaking when the traditional so-called conservative media was basically carrying water for Trump. But Trump now has the shadow of such disingenuous people as Roger Stone following him wherever he goes. It's this sort of intellectual dishonesty that plays against him and America. Think of this. Ann Coulter essentially came out just the other day and called Cruz supporters swine. Well, little orphan Annie Yap Yap Toto, it's time for you to go back to your kennel, because apparently you still haven't learned what reality is. But what's funny is the people you are insulting are the very people who used to buy your books. It's going to be interesting to see how you drudge up any readership from now on, because we here at the Wright Flyer will say that it would not be wise for our cherished listening passengers and audience to spend their hard-earned money on the worthless drivel that you put out and call publications and books, because it is quite clear that you are acting in an intellectually disingenuous fashion, that lying is something that you enjoy doing, and casting aspersions where they are not due or warranted is your new political playbook. Well, you've been wrong so many times, championing Krispy Kreme, Mitt Romney, and now Donald Duff, Julius Caesar, Trumpolini. You have lost any and all credibility that you might once have commanded. It's a tragedy to see that you have fallen to such depths, but it was predictable given the way that you have been so inaccurate for so often. That is just the way that things have fallen, and you have certainly done yourself no favors by engaging in this type of conduct and behavior, but that's your issue, and that's your problem to overcome. You have put this out, and we are just conveying the facts of what you have said and the way that you have betrayed your supposed conservative credentials. You have no one else to blame for in this other than yourself. So back to Trump harping on these so-called New York values. Again, this is just playing into a propagandistic campaign to attack Texas Senator and your arch rival, Ted Cruz, a man who has shown himself to be a true, staunch constitutionalist, the very sort of medicine that this nation needs now to face the ailments that have arisen and to properly deal with them. We have said time and again that the only way we can get this country back to its proper direction is to embrace the Constitution, thereby allowing the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, we the people, to come together in solidarity and unity to work towards righting the wrongs that face this country and empowering us to make this country robust and prosperous once again. Unfortunately, the Donaldus does not seem to care about that. He has not once spoken about it, and he has just doubled down on his efforts to use mudslinging and character assassination to get his way. It's like seeing the campaign of a spoiled brat, a child, a petulant child who has no care for anything in the world other than he himself. That has been the way that Donald Trump has acted for the vast majority of his 70 years on Earth, and it is shameful. It is deplorable. It has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States. Yet here we are. The anger being that of which it is in this country right now, due in no small part to the abject failures of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, to stand up to the Fabian socialist efforts to fundamentally transform this nation, has led to this type of blind rage and fury which grips this country. We are at a tipping point. This is one of those points in history where we can choose to redefine our nation by returning to the scriptures of our shared Constitution, or we can continue to go down the route of the status quo, which has led us to perpetual mediocrity and failure. I think that the choice that needs to be made, that should be made, is open and obvious for us all. But that is going to take us becoming more proactive in our duties, responsibilities, and obligations, primarily of standing up for and defending our fundamental and unalienable rights which were endowed to us by our Creator. You know, our founding fathers expected us to be proactive, to ensure that the rights and liberties that we enjoy can not only be handed down to the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born, but also to expand their ability and opportunities to exercise these fundamental and unalienable rights. That is the nature of a natural law system of which our representative republic is created. Our entire system is based upon these undeniable facts and realities which have been with us since the inception of this country well over 230 years ago. It is now time for we, the American people, to embrace this, to take the stance that is necessary to ensure that our founders' message has not been forgotten, and that we will not let the sacrifices that they made have been in vain, because we became the great and powerful people that we became in our relatively short yet illustrious history through that great birthright, which is the greatest birthright of any people on the face of the planet, that being the United States Constitution. This there can be no question about. It is why Jeremy and I get up in front of the microphone and speak to you time and again to remind you of the importance of our Constitution. It is that important of a document. But the only way that the Constitution can defend us is if we are willing to do whatever is necessary to defend the Constitution itself. That is the true message of self-accountability and self-responsibility. If you want to know what is an inherent and intrinsic part of the DNA of the United States of America, it is that undeniable message that has been with us since the inception of this great representative republic of ours. This is not something that is antiquated. The document is not something that should be swept aside for the whims of a modern society. Because our Constitution is based on natural law tenets, we must recall that these tenets are by their very nature timeless, meaning that they are just as applicable today as they were 200 years ago, as God willing they will be 200 years from now. These realities are there for us all to see. They are there to remind us of what our duties, obligations, and above all responsibilities are and always have been. That is something that we must embrace during this 2016 presidential election cycle if we are going to see the nation return to prosperity and fruition. These are our positions. They must be. They categorically must be, because that is the way that you save the country. But it must be we, the people, the true popular sovereigns in this great representative republic, that take the steps necessary to save the country. It cannot be a singular individual. It cannot be some messianic figure, because our founding fathers designed the government in such a way as so that no one individual could amass such power unto him or herself, which makes sense. They were diametrically opposed to centralized authority. Because if you recall, during our War of Independence, they were fighting the great centralized power of the Crown of Great Britain. That was a long, drawn out, and very difficult fight. And the reason behind that fight was that the central authority was abusing the fundamental and inalienable rights of the popular sovereigns. Those natural law tenets actually had their roots in ancient English heritage and tradition. But our founding fathers took it to the modicum of success, to the pinnacle of greatness which they always deserved and which they had always been intended to be implemented. That is what has made the United States the longest lasting constitutional republic that has ever been seen in the annals of world history. And if you stop and think about that for a moment, folks, that is not some small accomplishment. That is an amazing achievement. We have seen so much occur in the years and centuries since the foundation of our nation that it is mind-boggling to think that we have survived through it all. During that time, we saw the rise and fall of the French Revolution, the rise and fall of Napoleon. We saw the Civil War. We saw World Wars I and II. We are not a people that are accustomed to giving up, to allowing the forces of tyranny, despotism, and oppression to take root, and we have opposed it each and every place that it has attempted to rear its ugly head. That is the beautiful characteristic of the United States of America and her people, and that is something that we should take to heart, especially when we are in the midst of a great identity crisis as we are at this current juncture in our short yet illustrious history. We can come together now and send a solemn message of solidarity and unity to those forces that would work tirelessly to deprive us of our God-given liberties and rights, and let them know that we will not bow down to them, that we will not surrender our great heritage, character, spirit, and above all, national identity to their twisted machinations. This is because we are the popular sovereigns of this great representative republic. We are willing to do anything and everything that is necessary to ensure that our fundamental and inalienable rights live on through posterity as they were originally intended to be, all the way back to the inception of this country. That is the spirit of our founding fathers. It is this staunch opposition to the voices of tyranny and oppression that make up the quintessential strain and fiber of our national DNA. Not racism, as Barack Hussein Obama would have us all believe. You see, this is the danger of identity politics, and the way that Donald J. Trump tried to play this game with his visit to the 9/11 memorial today shows that he falls into that unequivocally. The idea that standing up and helping people, lending our neighbors a helping hand is somehow restricted to New York is beyond belief. This is something that all Americans do. It is why we are among the most compassionate people on the face of this planet. And he should recognize that. And if he wants to be president, then he must also come to the realization that in that job description is being representative of all Americans. It means that he would have to embrace American values, not just New York values. Now, this is not an insult to the people of New York. Rather, this is just a statement of fact. And we deal with the truth and the facts here, folks, and the truth has no agenda. So again, it comes down to this undeniable reality, this thing that Trump has ignored since he first officially threw his hat in the ring last summer. If we are going to see this country return to prosperity, then we must embrace the American values that are all-encompassing, in fact, of each and every state of the Union. We must embrace who we are as a people. We must again, understand what it means to be an American. And the best way to do that is to promote and foster this fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable rights. These are the stark facts which we must accept, that we cannot escape, which must become a part of the narrative if any Republican candidate is to win in the general election. But I don't think Donald Trump understands this. I think it goes beyond his capacity for understanding. It's too bigly for him, for lack of a better term. Donald, let me put it this way. American values are biglier than New York values. New York is not the only part of America. Now, I know you think that it's the only part of America because of your progressive views, because of your Fabian socialist views that you have peddled for the vast majority of your adult life. But there really is more to America than New York City, just as there's more to America than Texas or Michigan or California or Arizona. But we couldn't be America without those aspects either. So you see, this type of balkanization of which Trump is reaching towards really has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. But it ties into this game that he's playing, to this radical game of semantics that he's buying into, which puts him in line and more akin and in favor with the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. But again, it makes me wonder whether what he's trying to do here is play down this twisted game of semantics that we see played by the left time and again throughout the media cycles and election cycles that have repeated themselves before the American people over the last several decades. It is time we get past this. And it is time that we embrace our true national character, heritage, spirit, and above all, identity. You see, this is what the revisionist historians have been working towards, to sow the seeds of dissent within the American population, thereby making it easier to divide and conquer the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this great representative republic of ours. They have been working tirelessly and incessantly towards this goal for well over 100 years now, and their labor is starting to bear fruit. But that fruit is poisonous. It is threatening to kill the entire body politique of the United States of America, and that in and of itself is a dangerous condition that we find ourselves facing right here and right now. Again, we are faced with the choice of either accepting this as an unstoppable force of nature, or we can band together and say enough is enough. that we are going to embrace the Constitution again, and that will allow us, the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this republic, to do all that is necessary to bring this country back from the brink of ruin. You see, folks, this is what it means to be self-accountable, self-responsible. This is what it means to take action for ourselves, and it is what our founding fathers would have expected of us. We must be willing to be proactive. And unless and until we become more proactive in the maintenance and safeguarding of our liberties, we will continue to see these nefarious outside forces, these politically interested forces, working in a way that is diametrically opposed to our benefit and to our well-being. You see, again, this is where the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media have done a great disservice to the American people. They should have been vetting Donald Trump this whole time, just as they should have been vetting Barack Hussein Obama in the 2008 and 2012 elections. They have been derelict in their duty, and it has led to this type of divisiveness that we see running rampant from coast to coast and border to border in this great representative republic of ours. It is an undeniable fact that we see unfurling before our very eyes, and if we do not stop and act upon it now, we will continue to see these things unfurl before us at an alarming rate. The way they see it now, they are comfortable enough to go full tilt towards the utopian socialist agenda that they have been pressing for so long. They think that they are so close that they can already taste victory. And they think that we are too divided and too weak to mount any type of defensive against them. They couldn't be more mistaken. We are the greatest, freest, hardest working people on the face of the planet, and come hell or high water, we will find a way to put an end to their twisted machinations. We have done it every time adversity has been placed in our path. We have overcome every obstacle, every challenge, every attempt to divide and conquer us, and we have done it with a resoluteness of purpose that few people on the face of this earth have ever shown. That speaks volumes to the great heritage, character, spirit, and identity of the American people. It is our mission. It is our inheritance, and we show no signs of stopping or backing down from it because we refuse to back down from it, because we know just how important it is. We are the last best hope for liberty and freedom that the world has left, and therefore it is our duty, our obligation, and above all, our responsibility to stand up for these things, to ensure that they have a place in the future of society. Now, that is not some small option, and that is a heavy burden for us to carry upon our shoulders, yet if we don't carry it, no one else will. That is our duty and obligation, and we must not be afraid to take up the mantle, to defend and protect everything that we believe is so important. This is the true character, heritage, and spirit of the American people, and it is a beautiful thing to see. We should not pale from the challenge. Rather, we should bask in the challenge because it is a challenge. We should overcome adversity as we have each and every time that it has ever been placed in our path. That is who we are as American citizens, and that is what we shall do time and again until it is accomplished. We are the standard bearers of liberty and freedom. We are the standard bearers for those great and noble truths which are fundamental parts of our American psyche. The sooner that we embrace this and realize this, the better off we are. And again, folks, this is why we tell you to look into the things that we are saying, not just to take them at face value, but to see whether it is correct. I'm sure you'll find that 9 times out of 10, we are correct. And that is why we are here. We are here to empower you, to give you the tools necessary to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution, and thereby your fundamental and unalienable rights, which were endowed to you by your Creator. These are the empowering messages which need to reach each and every American, to revitalize that true greater good that we know and understand intrinsically is a part of this great representative republic of ours. Reject the message of the historical revisionists. Reject the messages of those Fabian socialists and those other nefarious forces that are working nonstop to deprive you of your sovereignty as popular sovereigns. Because what they are doing is working against the true grain and fiber of what it means to be a citizen of the United States of America. They are the ones that are working against you and against your inheritance and against the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born to this great country. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. I also invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you might have either here on our YouTube account or on our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. I also invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation X, at Radio Aviation EX. That's all one word, folks, at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, at Radio Aviation EX. There you'll find the departure board that lists my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton's personal Twitter account, my personal Twitter account, our Blogspot account, as well as our Cafe Press account, where you can find a bunch of trinkets and goodies like drinking glasses, hats, shirts, pens, bags, clocks with our logo on it and our first class passenger logo on it. Go ahead and take a look at those. If you find one that meets your fancy, please do buy one and give us a little bit of support here so that we can continue to bring you this true sense of enlightenment that we always strive to bring you here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Thank you again for joining us. Hope to see you next time. Do take care. See you around.